Hello and welcome to Economy 2.0, brought to you by the Silvio Gesell Foundation and the Henry George School. My name is Josh Sidman. After taking most of July off, we're back with a great lineup of upcoming episodes. On Tuesday, August 19th at 1 o'clock, we'll be joined by Carlos Luge. Carlos is a lawyer and economist by training and is the founder and director of the Silvio Gesell Institute in Argentina. Carlos has a deep and broad knowledge of the history of economic thought and has written extensively about what he calls the center versus periphery lens, whereby the field of mainstream economics gives undue weight to the work of economists in the center, which is to say the United States and Western Europe, while largely ignoring the work of thinkers in the periphery, which is basically anywhere other than the US and Western Europe. He makes a compelling case that many of the core economic ideas which are credited to thinkers from the center were preceded by thinkers in the periphery by decades and in some cases even centuries, and that in order to develop a fuller understanding, the field of economics needs to examine and integrate the work of thinkers from the periphery, including a number of South American thinkers who are essentially unknown in mainstream economics. Along similar lines, Carlos wrote a book entitled Keynes and Gesell, A New Paradigm, in which he argues that Keynes is credited with a number of key concepts that were previously developed by Gesell during his time in Argentina, and that the field of mainstream economics has not recognized this yet. Interestingly, in September, we'll be joined by an economist, Guido Preparata, who goes even further, having written a paper accusing Keynes of plagiarism of Gesell's ideas. And then on Tuesday, September 2nd, we'll talk with Felix Fuders. Felix is a German professor of economics who lives and works in Chile. He's the director of the Economics Institute at the Universidad Austral de Chile, and he's also the chairman of the Natural Economic Order Foundation, the main organization in Germany for promoting Gesell's ideas. Felix has written extensively about Silvio Gesell and focuses on issues of sustainability. His most recent book, How to Fulfill the UN Sustainability Goals, Rethinking the Role and Concept of Money in Light of Sustainability, makes the case that our flawed system of money is one of the primary drivers of unsustainable economic practices, and that it's essentially impossible to build a sustainable future without completely overhauling our system of money along the lines proposed by Silvio Gesell. All right, before we bring in today's guest, I'd like to ask for your help in growing awareness of this series. There are a number of ways you can do this. First, please like the YouTube videos and subscribe to the YouTube channels of the Silvio Gesell Foundation and the Henry George School. Also share the videos on social media or with people who you think might be interested. And if you're able, you can make a donation through the Silvio Gesell Foundation website. As always, I want to remind everyone that Economy 2.0 is meant to be a conversation, and anyone in the live Zoom audience is welcome to join in at any time. To do so, please use the raise hand button under the React tab on your Zoom toolbar. Also, as a reminder, these episodes are recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channels. All right, let me bring in today's guest. Christian Gelleri joins us from Germany, where he has nearly completed his PhD in economics at the University of Siegen. He's also the creator of the Chiemgauer, a regional currency in Bavaria. He created the Chiemgauer in 2003 as a project with his students while working as a teacher in a Waldorf school. Today, 22 years later, the currency continues to function with an annual turnover of over 7 million euros, making it one of the most successful complementary currencies in the world, and by far the most successful and sustained implementation of Silvio Gesell's proposal of demurrage. So Christian, welcome to Economy 2.0. Thanks so much for joining us. Why don't you get us started by telling us about your journey? How did you first become acquainted with Silvio Gesell? And share with us a bit about the history of the Chiemgauer.
Thank you, Josh. I have a long history with Silvio Gesell, and it started quite early. I think I was 15 or 16 years old, and I began to read books or hear cassettes, read books in the library, and I read a book about economy. It was about businesses which develop in a in a cycle. They grow, they they get big, and then they saturate, and then there's a turning point, and they go down. And there were many businesses in the history, and I wondered why the economy also had these waves, and I wondered why after such waves or after a crash we have such a misery, and with these questions, my mother came to me and said, "Oh, I have here a little book. Maybe you are interested. It's called To the Survivors. To the Survivors, and it was a collection of citations of Silvio Gesell. And I read it, and I thought, oh, it's interesting, but I didn't understood what is the concept behind it. And then I went to the library and asked for a book of Silvio Gesell, and they said they don't have one, and they have to look they have to look where is one, and we found one in the state library in Munich, and then I lent the book, and they said to me, "Oh, I can't take it at home. I must read it in the library." And then I read it in the library, and I found out it was the first issue of Silvio Gesell's book, The Natural uh, Economic Order, um, and it was very valuable, the book, and I read it, and I was enthusiastic, and I wanted to know more about it, and then I looked for people who are involved in this kind of theory. And after some time, I found some, and I discussed with them, and they were a bit older. Um, and and then I was acquainted with the idea of Silvio Gesell, and I thought, yeah, it's logic. And I think when a whole system works with such a negative interest money system, the waves of ups and downs would be not so so big, and not so with such depressions and such high unemployment that are followed by such a crash or financial crisis. And that was a fascinating idea. And but I was also a bit disappointed about the political consequences, because I saw nobody was interested in this idea in Germany or elsewhere. Nobody. And no politicians, no party. And then I was a bit frustrated. And then when I studied economics at the University of Munich, um, I also asked professors, and they laughed about the idea, and that, oh, the old demurrage money it's long gone and nobody's interested in it anymore. We are now modernized and we don't need it anymore. That was the answer of a professor of mine, and I read a small article about the idea to initiate a small initiative in a town like Munich, and to ask the people in Munich to make it. And I was fascinated by this idea to make it practical. And we founded a small group and we discussed a lot. And there, the idea of regional money was developed. And we tried it in Munich, but we failed completely. And then I made my traineeship as a teacher and was at the Waldorf School and Prien at Lake Chiemsee. And there I proposed the idea to students, and among other ideas, there were very interesting ideas, 6 ideas, and the students said the most interesting idea they have heard was about this regional money, and they want to try out to experiment with this. Um, and we started the initiative in autumn 2002, so 23 years ago. And then we tried to design the vouchers or the money, the cash money. We asked people, so we made a survey with parents, teachers, and businesses because we wanted to find out how do we um, how, how must the rules are adjusted that everybody is motivated to take part. And and we asked businesses what is the maximum fee they would carry. We asked parents and teachers what would be a motivation for them. I also asked students, and they said what would be motivating for us would be a sports hall at the school because we have no uh, sport teaching or only less teaching, only 40 minutes from 90 minutes, 2 hours, my 90 minutes. They only had 40 minutes sports teaching. And they said that's because we don't have a sports hall and we have to drive more than 40 minutes to the sports hall and back. When we would have a sports hall here, um, we could have sports for the whole time. And yeah, the students were very motivated, also the parents and teachers. And then we said, okay, all profits or fees we have or surpluses we have, we would give into the sports hall project. Um, and and when we make a currency circle with the Chiemgauer, um, then we define that every exchange from euro into Chiemgauer is um, sticked with 3% for the sports hall. And when you exchange euros back into Chiemgauer, 5% should go to the students' company, from which 3% goes to the sports hall and 2% for the costs of the operating of the Chiemgauer. That was the basic idea. And then we said, okay, we don't want the money to to be hoarded or to be lost in the currency cycle. We want that it is circulating and it comes back to us. And and then came the second idea. The first idea was to have the exchange fee back into euro. And the second idea was the the demurrage fee or the negative interest on Chiemgauer. That everybody who holds Chiemgauer should spend it within a short period of time. And and then we began with 30 parents and 20 businesses, and it began slowly, but after a few months, we had more parents and more businesses took part. And then the first business cycles developed, and businesses wanted to spend the Chiemgauer within the network. They didn't want to change back because it has high costs, 5%. And then the circulation began. And I think that's a very important feature of the Chiemgauer, that the Chiemgauer circulates about 5 times or 7 times when it is exchanged from euro into Chiemgauer. It is circulated 3, 4, 5 times. And after that, it is exchanged back into euro. And that comes from the special rules. The first one is that you have a fee when you get out of the network. And the second one is you have to pay something when you hoard money. And after 20 years now, we see that it works. It's quite simple. It has 2 fees, and the Chiemgauer never stops. So when a euro is exchanged into Chiemgauer, it circulates and it works because the fees work. And then comes um, where we started from. We started with people who thought about the rules, they decided about the rules, and they can change the rules. So it's nothing fundamental that we have these two kind of rules in the money system. But when we talk about it and discuss it and we think about it, it's the most logical form of rules, and everybody has a win in the network. Of course, when you look at it on the individual side, somebody has to exchange money back into euro, or somebody has to pay a fee when it comes to the end of a half a year. Then she has to pay something. But when you look at the whole system, um, we see that the circulation is stable, and the incentive to stay within the network is also very high. And these are the two elements of our currency, and we have different types of complementary currencies in the world. So the Chiemgauer is a convertible currency. So we also have other currency types like credit currencies or mutual credit currencies or fiat currencies, cryptocurrencies. So it's not a must that the Chiemgauer has to be designed in this way, but we decided this way, and we saw that it is integrated in the economy. And yeah, I think that was the beginning of the Chiemgauer. And yeah, maybe the next question or yeah, the next
Yeah,
comment.
so it's interesting. I'm learning for the first time that your primary focus was on a community currency rather than a demurrage currency, and I'm interested to know uh, what was your experience like when you proposed demurrage as a feature of this currency. My experience when talking about the concept of demurrage to people is that you run into a lot of resistance. Um, and given that your primary motivation was a community currency rather than necessarily a demurrage currency, it's an interesting choice that you decided to incorporate a feature that I imagine might have resulted in more resistance than if you had not incorporated that feature. So can you talk about how people responded to your decision to include demurrage as an aspect of the currency?
Yeah, it's Yeah, it was important that we introduced the Chiemgauer concept with this demurrage. So we doesn't change a rule after a while. We started with it from the beginning, and then people had the time to get used to this rule. And and of course, in the beginning, there was some resistance or some dumb thoughts about it or some surprises. I remember a teacher, she came to me and said, "Oh, I have these Chiemgauer and they are nothing, they have no value anymore because they had no stamps." And I explained, "Oh, you have to pay now 25 cents and then you get the value of 30 euro again." And then she was surprised to that is valid and that is so cheap, 25 cents. Oh, that's not much. So she was afraid that she lose a lot of money, and then she saw that it's only a small amount of money, and then she got the stickers and she sticked it on the Chiemgau. She had another quarter. In the beginning, we have quarters, quarter of a year, and then she had another 3 months to spend it, and then she never came again because every time she exchanged Chiemgau, she spent it at once. So she changed her behavior. And I also talked to a cinema owner, and he said, "Oh, at the end of the month or end of the quarter, people run to me and want to spend their Chiemgauer in my cinema." And of course, in the beginning, he denied to accept it because he said, "Oh, it's only valid for 1 day or 2 days. I don't accept it anymore." Then I, some of one teacher explained him, think about it. You get an entry fee of a fee of 10 euros for your seat, and when I don't come, you you don't get anything. You get zero. So when the baddest thing what can happen to you is that I pay to you 10 Chiemgauer, then you have to stick the sticker for 3%. So it's 30 cent. So you only get 9.70 € for your seat. But the alternative is that you earn nothing. And then he thought about it and said, "Okay, that's logic." And I take it. And then 2 years after, we said, "Oh, we can change it from 3 months to half a year." And then he was against it because he said, "I have an advantage of it. People come to me. Why should we change it?" So that's the changing. When you practice it, it becomes yeah, a no problem, a no burner. And but in the beginning, yeah, you think such a lot of things and think it's so complicated. But when you are used to it, it's simple. And then we developed further. After 2 years, we began to develop the digital Chiemgauer. And with the digital Chiemgauer, it's much easier. You don't have to put a stamp on a paper currency. You have a smartphone app or you have a card, and then the negative interest is applied automatically. And and it's very smooth because we have a system with our accounts that you have spare time of 30 days. So you have no or 3 months, 90 days. You don't have to pay anything. The first 3 months you get um, your money, the Chiemgauer, the digital Chiemgauer, and after 91 days, the demurrage begins with with an interest rate of 6% a year. But for a day, it's only one, 375 days divided. So it's 0.01% per day. And for $1,000, it would be, I don't know, 2 or 3 cents. And then it's a lot of easier. That's a lot easier for businesses also because they have their income, the turnover in Chiemgauer. They spend it not at once. They collect it for the next invoice, and after a month or 6 weeks or 7 weeks, they pay a invoice from the supplier, and then it's away. And they are within the time limit of 3 months. So they never pay anything for the Chiemgauer when you look at the negative interest rate. So the smartest businesses, they never pay a fee because they spend the Chiemgauer within the 3 months, and they spend the Chiemgauer again, and don't exchange into euro. And they are smart, and they have very low fee, and about 80 to 90% are this smart. And then we have a few bigger companies, and they say, okay, we have much Chiemgauer, we have to exchange a certain amount back into euro, but it's okay for us. It's a marketing fee and it's for the region. It's for the common good for the region. They pay, for example, 1,000 euros a year or 10,000, 5,000. But it's always related to their size, because when a company has a turnover of 10 million euros, it's no problem when they spend 10,000 euros of Chiemgauer for sponsoring into the region. It's normal. So for bigger companies, it's not a problem. And for the small companies, it's a big chance because they have lower fees within these kind of system.
This idea of a 90-day waiting period until demurrage kicks in, where did that come from? Was that your idea? I'd never heard that.
Originally, yeah, I never heard of it too. Originally, it was an idea of a businessman. He said, hey, guy, I don't like the idea of negative interest because I have to pay from the first day and I have no chance. You give me no chance. But when I would have 30 days free and then you apply it, that would be an idea. And then I said, hey, you're right. So we talk to our community, they give us feedback, and then I asked the programmer, hey, can you do it? Can you program not only negative interest, but also that the first 30 days are free? And then he said, yeah, how is the formula? And then we thought about it, and then we found the formula for it. And then he said, no problem. When I have a formula, I can program it. Yeah. And that was the story of it. I don't know if no, I think it's yeah, we have voucher systems which are invalid within 3 years or 1 year. Or you have vouchers with a date, with an end date, and then you lose 100% of value. I think this is a compromise to have it within a certain time, uh, and then the hard rule is applied, and that's like a compromise. And I don't know if it would work in the society, but it works in a community. So with a few thousand people where we know each other, it works perfect.
As an economist now with a deep understanding of the thinking of Silvio Gesell, you of course know that the rationale for demurrage is not only about circulation, it's about elimination of the business cycle. It's about changing how wealth flows and and is distributed throughout the economic organism. To what extent was communicating the entire Gessellian perspective part of the Chiemgauer, or did you mostly just focus on the local circulation benefits of demurrage?
Um, yeah, so we use it more practical, yes. But of course, I have the background, and it was always a goal to implement an interest-free credit system, because the idea was, okay, we have fees for the positive amount on your account or your positive amount of cash money. But on the other side, we would have interest-free loans. So it takes out the pressure on the businesses, and it takes out the pressure to have growth. And and we also experimented with these kind of loans, because we had businesses who had too much Chiemgauer and they didn't want to change it back into euro. And we offered them, okay, give it to our cooperative, and then we lend it or we invested in the region. And we have to have certain amount these saving and investing model in the region. So it's not only about circulating, it's also about changing the conditions for the businesses, conditions for non-profit organizations, and to lower this community costs for money. Because when not an individual gets a high profit out of a saving, um, then the costs for the community or for individuals who invest are lower. And we can do investments which are not rational in the normal capitalistic system. So one example was um, a water energy, how is it called? Uh, an water electricity system. Yeah, and a small one. And we had us at near to the Waldorf School is a small river, and there was a place, and we saw that when we install such a water equipment, then we get electricity out of it. But when you calculate it on the normal business administration level and say, okay, the rentability of it, what is it? Was the amortization rate? So and we found out it was zero, and nobody would invest in an investment which is zero for the next 30 years. But with the Chiemgauer, we had many people who said, it doesn't matter. I'm happy with zero, because when I have the money, I have to pay 6% a year. And when I invest into in the water electricity system, I get a profit because I get zero. And many invested. And today we have this system, and it generates electricity the whole year. Yeah, and it's an example for investments which are usual in the sustainability side, that many investments are not done because they don't have the profit. And within this Chiemgauer network it works because the expectation of a profit is much lower.
So it's very interesting to me that you incorporated a credit market in this complementary currency. Um, and it's intuitive as to why anyone would want to lend the Chiemgauer because it is a way of avoiding demurrage. Can you talk about the other side of the borrowing and lending? Who give some examples of those who are motivated to want to borrow in the
Mhm.
Chiemgauer?
Yeah, the example of this water system was we have handcrafts in the region, and they can take a part of their money in the Chiemgauer, and therefore it's more expensive, a little more expensive, and it was a handmade um, thing, but um, yeah, um, it is connected to each other. Yeah, the regional products or goods, they have a higher quality, but they are more expensive and they need more work and less. So they machines are the capital part is lower and the working part is higher in the for the regional products. And investments are easier because when you know, okay, I get a loan with 0% or 1%, it's much easier that you can manage this kind of investment than you when you go to a bank and the bank says, oh, are you bankable at all? And when? Okay, you're not as bankable as a big company, so I take 10% from you, 12%. And you don't get a normal fixed loan, you only get a disposable loan, and then you have to pay 12%. That's normal. That's normal for our businesses. With 1 to 5 employees. They um, only when they have a house or then they have securities, they get lower interests for 5%, 6%. But when you don't have securities, then you have very high interest rates, and some of the businesses don't get a loan at all. And then we were also part of the microfinance network from 2009, so 7 years after the Chiemgauer. We participated on a microfinance program in Germany, and then we were able with it to give credits in Chiemgauer and in euro. And the euros credits are with interest, and the credits with Chiemgauer are much less. And and that was a thing of professionalizing it. The disadvantage is we have a bank in between, and the bank they have costs. We have to pay the bank, and then we have some interest for the Chiemgauer and a high interest for the euro accounts. And so we have investments, we have these micro loans, and so we have um, yeah a variety of instruments and tools to help our small businesses.
I'd like to delve more into the credit market. I find that fascinating. So there is one central bank that administers all of the credit, and and or are there multiple lending agencies?
Both. We have direct lending. So I have a friend, and I gave him this Sunday 3,000 Chiemgauer for interest of 0. Nobody is involved, no cooperative, no organization. Direct, I make a contract, I give him the 3,000, it's trust, and he pays me back 100, or he said he pays me back 500 every 5 months, and uh, and now he can invest his small thing. That's the most easiest thing. And then we have a more formalized approach with the microfinance, that somebody says, okay, I need to invest a harvest on my olive oil for the next year, and I have to pay my Greek farmers, and I need euros for it. And then he get a loan, he pays it, and then we have a specialty here. I offered, okay, you can pay back this euro credit in Chiemgauer. So you pay the interest, but when you pay back, you can pay it in Chiemgauer. And then he was happy. Then he was happy because when he goes to the bank, he pays interest and he has no additional benefits. But with us, we say, okay, you pay the interest, the same interest with as your bank, but the part what we get from the bank, we get a provision, and we take this provision, and then we say, okay, you don't have to pay the exchange fee. You can pay back, can pay it in Chiemgauer to the account, to the credit account. That's another idea what we had, and it works very good. And the third one is the Chiemgauer model. So we give a Chiemgauer credit and we get Chiemgauer back, and then you get a bonus. So you pay interest, but in the end you get a bonus. And then you only have to pay half of the bank interest rates in the end. But it's still expensive for small businesses. So we are still not happy with it. Yeah, we would like to have more direct lending, peer-to-peer lending, and maybe we integrate some peer-to-peer tool into our Chiemgauer system. So we develop it. So it's a living real laboratory, and when there are ideas, we try to we try to integrate it, we try to develop it, and yeah, as I told you, with the businessman who had the idea with the 30 days or 90 days, yeah, it is developed out of the debate culture in the community, and also with marketing ideas, or when we make together some advertisements with newspapers, or make a film together, or whatever. Many of the things are developed out of the community. So it's the community is first, and then comes the rules and the techniques.
All right, to change gears just a little bit, this series, Economy 2.0, is based on the point of view that the conventional economic system is likely or possibly headed toward decline and or collapse. And so the goal is to bring in perspectives on alternatives to the conventional economy, things that could potentially replace the conventional system. Do you think of the Chiemgauer as purely complementary to the conventional system, or do you look beyond it as something that could potentially over time eclipse and or replace the conventional system?
Yeah, in different forms. So we don't know how it could happen, that transformation, but I believe we need a transformation because I don't believe we have the best system yet. The system, what we have now is, yeah, we have all these bubbles, we have this exponential growth of money or debts, assets also, and then we have these breakdowns and crisis and long miseries and long times of unemployment. And I don't believe that it ends automatically. Of course, after a crash and after misery, it starts again, and then we start again and we make the same mistakes again. So we repeat the same system now for a few hundred years, and it never changes because we don't know nothing else. So we repeat every time the same. And and what we try to show in this experiment, that there is a possibility to have another way. It's like it began with wind farms or with solar energy. In the beginning, all said, "Yeah, it's crazy, or it doesn't work, or it's too small." And then a few people make experiments with it, and today it's a real alternative. Or in the when you see in the growth of energy, the majority of the plus is in renewable energies, and and nobody believed it in 40 or 50 years ago. So my grandfather was one who believed in these kind of system. He invested in it, and he crashed with these investments because in the beginning it was too expensive. So you had a one euro for 1 kilowatt hour in the beginning for wind energy, and it was too expensive. So he lost his investment. Yeah, but he tried. And I think we are in the same stage now for the complementary currencies like the Chiemgauer. When you look at now, it's too expensive because it's too small. We have no backing. It is not on a scale where where it's professional enough. So we have developed a lot. So we use techniques from the whole world, um, but it's not on the level um, where we can transform right now. But but we had some examples in history, like in Argentina, where we saw when the peso breaks down, um, complementary currencies can be bigger in a short period of time, and they can help people in times of crisis. And that's possible also for the Chiemgau. We had the Wörgl example, 1932, where we saw on local community issues, such a local currency with a demurrage, and it helps the people in a very short period of time. And and I think um, from my side, I would believe we would have a more decentralized money system. So not a centralized money system where we have a central planner for money. Um, I would prefer a more decentralized money system where we have many small central banks, yeah, in a region or yeah, in a district. And something like a central bank is only coordinating and doing some complementary to the regions. Although we would turn it on on the other way. We had a system in Europe with the European Currency Unit, the ECU. It existed from, I don't know, 1980, 1970s, 1990s, and it was only a balance currency for the localized systems, so the national currencies. And you could imagine a regional money system, and then then something like a common currency unit to have the exchange. And with the techniques today, it would be easy with a smartphone. Of course, I can pay in Spain or in the US or in Canada, but it would have consequences if I am not paying within my region. So I would have to pay a small fee, for example. And and it could be very smooth and intelligent. It could be a world system connected, but based on many decentralized regional central banks. And the power would be in the regions. And the people have access to this power. That's a total different thinking when you look at the Fed or the European Central Bank, where a person like you and me has no single millimeter of power or or access to the power. Maybe we can't even talk to these people. Yeah, when you are a hedge fund manager, okay, maybe you are invited to a conference and can talk to them central bankers, but normal people have no access to central bankers. And I know another example from a small country like Denmark. It is said that the central banker of Denmark is looking for discussion and debates with people. And it's a small country with a few million people. It's possible. So when you look in the future of money, I would have a vision like a lots of Denmarks in the world and not a lots of US and Chinas.
So speaking about central banks and governments more generally, as you certainly know, most most of the demurrage currency systems throughout history have um, have drawn strong opposition from central authorities. The Virgil experiment was outlawed by the Austrian central bank. I think the Vara network, the same thing happened. I think that the Argentinian project also, the Argentinian project for a number of years drew enormous participation, but now 20 or so years later is a fraction of the size of what it once was. And I think a lot of that had to do with the opposition of officialdom. What have you had any? What has been the response of governments of central banks
Mhm.
to the Chiemgauer?
Yeah, we had some success with the Chiemgauer. We have grown over the years, 2004, 5, 6, 7. So every year we had a growth. And after some time, local authorities were asked to participate because we had 50, 70, 80 businesses in a small town. And then they asked the local authority to take part because they said, okay, we pay you taxes and you can spend your money in the town. So why don't you take taxes with with Chiemgauer? And and we talked to a lot of mayors, and one of them said, "Okay, let's try. I take it." And then he took it, and after 1 year, it worked. It was a hard time with the administrator of the community, the local authority. Um, he couldn't imagine how he can integrate it in his bureaucratic software and his system, but he integrated it and said, "Okay, I found a way. It's a payment method like others. It's a ninth payment method. Okay, I integrated. And when somebody wants to pay with Chiemgauer, he shouldn't say he wants to pay in Chiemgauer. He should say he wants to pay with payment method number 9. Okay, and it worked. It worked very good, and the local authorities has spent all the Chiemgauer within the region. They bought technical equipment and they bought some gifts for jubilees, and it worked very, very good. And then the upper administration, the supervisory administration came to the local authority and said, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're using a money that is not the euro." And now we examine it, and they wrote 10 or 12 pages about it. And then they said, "Oh no, it's not possible. It's not allowed. It's not in the law that in the law doesn't mention the Chiemgauer. And then the law doesn't mention the Chiemgauer, it's not allowed." And then they forbid it. That was the end of the first local authority who accepted Chiemgauer. And I would say it stopped a bigger step for the Chiemgauer because many local authorities were interested, and and bigger companies would have participated when they have the possibility to pay taxes. So we have a big mineral water company. And they said, "Okay, we would join when we can pay our taxes." And then it was forbidden, and I would say it stopped our one important development of the Chiemgauer. And and after, yeah, we had some growth after that, 2 or 3 years, and then it stopped. And then we came to a stage where we had a dead end. And the dead end is, of course, that we can't work with the local authorities, which has a big share of the economy in the region. Yeah. Another stop or break is the employees, because we have a law which says the employees have to be paid in the national currency euro. And there's no exemption, even if the employee and the employer are 100% secure. They want to make a contract and they agree to each other. Um, but when it goes to court, the court says the contract is not valid because the law says only euros. And these two hurdles, yeah, are are stopping us from growing.
Okay, it makes sense that you would be encountering such obstacles, but it sounds to me like at least you have not had the national government of Germany or the European Central Bank attempt to shut you down entirely. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's there were talks behind the scenes, and there were official talks with us, and it was very interesting. I remember a talk in at the Federal Finance Ministry, and it was a state secretary, and he said in secrecy to the to the people who were there. I wasn't there. We had a delegation of regional money, and 2 or 3 people went to him, and he said, um, I know that the regional currencies are circulating, and they are okay in this stage or in this size. But when it comes to the state, I say to you, there's a limit, and you can't get over this limit, because they visited him to ask him to to make a law or to make something to make it easier for local authorities or for the state to accept taxes. And he said, um, that's the limit. And I know why this limit exists, because you can't grow anymore. So your size will be small forever. And that's okay. We can arrange with it. Okay, so we are tolerated. And yeah, until now we can do what we want. In this small size, we have to apply some rules, of course. So money laundry rules or something like that. They are applied in a small, light-weighted form in the Chiemgauer. We don't have to apply the same rules as the banks. That's an advantage. Um, but on the other side, we are not allowed to make big business.
Can you give us a snapshot, sort of from 2002 or three or whenever it was that you started until now, the annual turnover of Chiemgauer, so that we can get a sense of the trajectory?
Yeah. Yeah, we have saturated turnover now because in the first 12 or 13 years we had a growth from beginning with 60,000, 100,000, a few 100,000 Chiemgauer, and as you said, now we have 5, 6, 7 millions of Chiemgauer turnover in a year, and there we have our limit. So we don't find more businesses in the region who accepts the Chiemgauer and don't find more consumers who spends it. So we have an yeah, we have a turnover of these 5, 6, 7 million. We have a donation every year of 60,000 Chiemgauer to the non-profit organizations. Many are part of it, of the system now, not only the first school. It's 300 projects, and I think we have about 30 or 40 projects which have a bigger share in it, and they get 60,000 Chiemgauer. And in addition to that, many companies say in the meantime, we don't donate in euro at all. We only donate in Chiemgauer because we can spend our Chiemgauer in an easy way to give it to the nonprofit. And the nonprofit say, okay, of course I take the money. It's easy money, and then they spend it again. So we have now a system which works, which is consolidated in a certain form, but we are also in a we have reached some limits here, and we see, and then we have to change the perspective from Germany to France, for example. We see when there's politics which is open for this kind of idea, then it can get to a bigger stage. And in France, there is a law uh, that was developed, and it says that local currency systems are allowed in a certain form when it is operated by a common good company or a social entrepreneurship company. Then we allow this kind of company to issue a local currency. And that's in the law of solidarity economy from 2014, I think. And that's a big achievement for us, for the movement, and especially for the France network. And many local currencies were issued after this law. And we have about 70 or 80 local currencies in France, and we only have, I think, 10 to 20 in Germany. And I think that's the difference. When there's policy behind, um, which backs this kind of idea, then it grows and it becomes easier.
So your your vision for the future sounds more like one of proliferation of many, many complementary currencies, as opposed to any of them growing significantly beyond the current scale of the Chiemgauer. Is that an accurate representation of your perspective?
No, I want the Chiemgauer at least 100 times bigger than now. But it has to be the political decision behind it in the region and in the federal government or the European government, maybe also. Um, and yeah, I had a vision written 15 years ago. I said, okay, it would be wise to have 50% in a region organized within the region with local money, and only, for example, 30% globalized and 20% in a localized form. And so we take some, not only the money out of the global context, also the global production is reduced to a form that is adapted to the needs of people. And I think we produce too much now. And the fast fashion problem, all these kind of products we don't need. We could increase the quality with regional production. We have a more sustainable way of using goods, and and of course we have a globalized economy in many forms, like tourism or like smartphones or computers, machines, um, solar cells. So there can be many things which are produced globally. But when we think of meat or cheese or clothes or shoes, I think many things can be produced in the region again. And yeah, there's a citation of Keynes, and he says, yeah, let the ideas or the journeys or uh, let the ideas spread all over the world and be globalized, but the main things must be in a region or in a nation. So food production should be subsidiary. Um, Health, living, housing, these things should be regionalized, and many of them are right now. And 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 I think that could be stronger. And yeah, many things which are global now um, could be could be a bit less. And then in the end you get a good balance of a globalized economy and a regional economy. Yeah, I said, okay, let's make a 50-50 economy. Um, There's another idea with localized forms of neighborhood and self-help movements. So you can also say, let's make
Let's make
1/3 for in the local form, 1/3 in the regional economy, and 1/3 in the global economy. That could be an outlook which would help the nature, which could help the social relationships between people, and which could be a balance at all for our society. I see there are many comments here on the right side, and I don't know when we when we look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll remind everyone in the audience that obviously Christian and I can't really read the comments. So if anyone wants to jump in, just use the raise hand button, and I'll bring you on screen and you can join the conversation. One question, Christian, has there been any thought of attempting to link up regional currencies in enabling direct exchange. Because for if you've got a Chiemgauer and you want to go to France and participate in a complementary currency ecosystem there,
Mhm.
you would have to first convert your Chiemgauer into euros and then convert your euros into that other complementary currency. Has there been any thought um, of facilitating direct exchange between
Mhm.
regional complementary currencies?
Yeah, yeah, there are some attempts of a credit clearing or clearing system. Um, and yeah, it would be possible. And we have some forms in Germany to have these exchanges when I want to spend the Chiemgau in Flensburg or in Leipzig. I go to another town. We have small initiatives there, and I can spend it right now. So I have 50 shops in Leipzig where I can spend the Chiemgauer with a very small exchange fee. It's I don't know. And we even yeah we don't have implemented a fee right now because we don't have many examples of exchanges. So I can do it when I want, and I have done it a few times. But my living is in my own region, so 99% happens in the Chiemgau in my own region, and I spend it here. And it's possible when I travel to another town that I spend my Chiemgau there. And yeah, we have some software techniques. And yeah, we have the first European meeting of local currencies in October. And maybe that's an outcome that we that we create a clearing system for our local currencies. And and
That's
and
an
the and the barter systems or the mutual credit system, commercial mutual credit systems, I think they have such a system for the credit systems between the US systems and also worldwide. Yeah.
Do you have any concern that if you actually made significant progress in that respect, that that might be the thing that would bring real opposition from established power? Like, it's one thing to have a regional currency with an annual turnover of 5, 6, 7 million euros. It would be quite another thing to have 100 regional currencies
Yeah.
all linked up through enabling direct exchange and mutual clearing.
Every 5 years, I get a phone call or email, and I'm asked how much turnover do we have, and this email comes from the German Bundesbank, and they make a survey every few years. It's not official. They only want to know from all the local currencies in Germany how much turnover do they do, because they have a study from 2005, and it said, okay, it must be 1 million turnover, and they laughed about it. And then they asked again, and we said, okay, we make 5 or 7 million. You make 5 or 7 million? And that's more than the 1 million for whole Germany. What happened in the meantime? And of course, yeah, we are watched, we are observed, and nobody cares really. On the other side, they watch, and it's friendly. I was at conferences at the Bundesbank and the European Central Bank, and I discussed the negative interest topic. So I was at a conference for negative interest rates with the main speaker, Kenneth Rogoff there. I discussed with him and many others. It was very interesting. I think it's not an opposing um, yeah situation here. So they know us, they appreciate us, and we appreciate some things what the central bank do, like the negative interest rates. So we liked it when they introduced it, and there's also talking, and there were also before they initiated the negative interest in the European Central Bank, they wrote papers, and in the papers they cited Wörgl, and in two papers they also cited the Chiemgauer. Those they knew before they say established the negative interest rate what the negative interest is. So they didn't do it out of nothing. So they know the history, and here's the connection where an experiment can be helpful for the society, I think.
Well, it's
Robert is,
great that you have thus far kept a warm relationship with officialdom. I have a feeling that if you grew much more, that might change. But we've got a raised hand, so let me bring Robert Lowry onto the screen.
yeah.
Robert, go
Hi
ahead.
hi there, thanks. Christian, that was great. I 100% support what you're trying to do. And I say that in case what I'm about to sort of say gets slightly lost in translation as to something that I've been looking at a workaround, this whole business of getting too big. I mean, we're in a crazy situation where you can do what you're trying to do, and the powers that be want to keep you small. Yet you can set up a crypto asset, Bitcoin or whatever, and treat it like a commodity, and you can grow enormous,
Yes.
and for no public good. So just something I'm going to throw out there for you, something that I've been kind of considering and looking at myself, is actually effectively packaging what you're doing, but packaging it as a commodity so that you can then you're then participating in the rules that surround commodity trading and the crypto asset trading that's out there at the moment. So you're still doing exactly what you're doing, but the actual package is a package of a commodity or crypto asset. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So
Mm,
then
yeah.
you turn around and say, okay, you want to shut me down? Well, we're behaving in this. These are sort of shareholders. These are whatever. They're that they've bought into this product, and we're paying them dividends from this rather than or we're paying them it's like paying them bits of Bitcoin or something like that, but in fact you're paying a bit of your Chiemgauer. So you
Mm.
know come at me if you want to, because this is the way we're going to do it. But anyway, interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would agree that we have these new kinds of technologies, and we had some open space here, and in the meantime we have some regulation in Germany too for cryptocurrencies. Um, I yeah, we are also discussing to experiment with a crypto software. And we are applying right now for a European fund for creating it. And so I wouldn't say that we don't use cryptocurrencies, but we are a bit slow, and so we use our old software, and we are a bit conservative. So we watch, we observe what happens, and we don't want to be part of a tulp mania, and therefore we are very careful. We are very careful with the Chiemgauer yeah, to be not in the front of the cryptocurrencies. We know a lot of them, but yeah, we are still careful, and with some other currencies, we examined if we should apply it, and we have some currencies which apply cryptocurrencies right now as technique, and yeah, it works quite okay, but it we don't have a wonder here because uh, as I said in the beginning, the community comes first, and the community has to integrate it, and that is always slow. That's not fast.
Yeah. I suppose what it really was trying to get less on the technical side of it,
Yeah,
but just purely using the law that as exists. I mean, these
yeah,
crypto asset laws are coming in, so you're not destroying what you're trying to set out
yeah,
to achieve, but you just use that law to enable you to work around the constrictions that you're currently facing.
yeah. I agree. In the meantime, we have more laws about it. So the Wild West is not existing anymore, and because of that, yeah. For example, when we trade cryptocurrencies. So when you say, okay, we define the Chiemgauer as cryptocurrency, and then we would be a trader, then we would have to register as trader, and then we would have to uh, obey the law for traders. And that is in Germany complicated. All things which are supervised in Germany are complicated. And with the Chiemgauer right now, we have no official supervision of our authority. And that's an advantage at this stage. So yeah, to make it bigger or to grow bigger has to do with more administration, with more supervision, so more administration costs, and then costs, of course, because you need more people to manage or to administer it, and so yeah, it's always a question, yeah, what is the next step and what makes sense for us?
Yeah,
But
no, thank you.
but of course, I appreciate the idea.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got another raised hand. Cam, do you want to turn on your camera so that I can bring you on screen? There you are. All right, Cameron is a previous guest on Economy 2.0. Welcome back, Cameron.
Hello. Hey,
Looks like
Josh. Christian, love the talk. Got so many things in my head going, spinning all the gears. Even Mr. Roberts' question had me jot down a couple extra, so we'll get to those later. But it seems like you're maybe you've got a particular vantage point that I'm fascinated in that this has run for a long time. And so maybe you can answer this question, maybe the only person in the world who can answer this question of the patterns of succession, where, early on, maybe you got, the analogy here is like, from grassland to forest, at first you get a very simple set of, grasses, and then they lead to building the soil, and you get to shrubland where there's a little more complexity. And then finally, when you're at the other end of the succession, it's sort of stable around, allowing for example, megafauna like bears or something in a mature forest, because there's not just one thing, there's many things. Anyways, I'll skip forward a little bit. Have you observed that in terms of like maybe early on, nobody did any transactions where it was labor based, it was all very simple food transactions or something, and then eventually you had businesses start adopting it, and a more complex kind of transaction became more prevalent. Have you seen this? Can you comment on it?
Yeah. In the beginning, we had retail trade stores, and they sold books and some food and some clothes and a restaurant, and yeah, we have a very simple form of economy here with parents exchanging, then consuming, and the business owners also consumed a little bit, and then they exchanged their Chiemgauer back into euro. That was, I think, the first 2 years. And the businesses asked their some suppliers, and it's not possible in many branches, but in the food sector it's possible. So they asked the bakery, or they asked the juice company or the mineral water company. They should accept Chiemgauer, and then a few farmers and a few suppliers tr yeah, they tried it with cash Chiemgauer, and then there was a stop because it was too complicated for the business to business transactions. And they said, okay, when we should proceed here, we need a digital form. So that was the main motivation to program a digital Chiemgauer very fast to make it possible for business to business transactions. And then we had a gross trader.
And just a pause there. Was there any sort of, they were hoping to get a charge account and you had to give everybody unique ID? Like what about going digital was essential to them?
Yeah, it was for the businesses, it was the administration costs. And
To tell the federal government, like, was it perfect bookkeeping, or what exactly was it that they said we can't do it until you adopt the digital
yeah,
version because we need this part about it?
yeah, I talked with the organic gross trader and he began to he said, we have the driver of the of the lorry. He comes to the shop owner and he said, I can't imagine that he gets now 5,000 Chiemgauer from the shop owner, and then he goes to another shop and another shop, and in the evening he comes back with the
Ah, I
5,000
see.
Chiemgauer and gives it to me, and therefore I don't participate in your system because I will get crazy. And and then we said, okay, we must have the digital form for him. And we developed it. And then I asked again, and he said, "Oh no, it's too expensive for me." That was my first experience. And then we went to another organic cross trader and that, okay, I have a business model for you. We bring you 5 new customers. And then he said, okay, that's interesting. What do I have to do? Okay, you have to accept the Chiemgauer and you have to pay the fees, and you don't have to accept 100%, only a part, say 10% or 20%. And then he calculated and said, okay, that's cheap. We try. And then we established it, and he got his 5 new customers. He got 10 new customers. Um, and that was the beginning of the business to business transactions. And then we asked suppliers, we asked technical cross traders, we asked lawyers, we asked tax advisors. So many people were asked, and many said, okay, I participate because it's easy with the digital Chiemgauer. So, and that was a big development step for us. I would say we increased from 500,000 Chiemgauer turnover to the 3, 4, 5 million. And today we have 80% in digital Chiemgauer and 20% in cash Chiemgauer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
100%. And this question about, did you continue printing cash Chiemgauer, or was that 20%? Let's say it grew 5 times since you built the digital amount of the proportion, or is it more than that? In fact, it grew more than that.
We had 200,000 Chiemgauer turnover in the second year, and we still have 800 or 1 million Chiemgauer turnover in cash. So it's 5 times more. And but we see a decline. So we had 2 million or 2.5 million in cash Chiemgauer, and today we see only 1 million or below 1 million Chiemgauer. So from 2015, 10 years later, we have a decline of 1 million Chiemgauer, and we had a growth in the digital Chiemgauer. And that's the same development with the euro. And yeah, we had the same development in the times of COVID, when more people use the digital payment methods. But it still exists, and many businesses only accept the cash Chiemgauer, and they only use the cash Chiemgauer, and it works with electricity, without. So yeah, it's still popular, and yeah, people like the motives of our monies, and so I would say yes. Yeah, we have both, and we are still not giving up the cash Chiemgauer. But we have to say the main work, so 60 or 70% of the work comes from the cash Chiemgauer. So from the costs, we have the main part in the cash part, and from the success, we have the main part in the digital.
Christian, can you tell us a little bit about the administrative and governance side of the Chiemgauer? You had mentioned when you were introducing what the Chiemgauer is, that the rules can be changed. How does that process work?
Yeah. So we have the plenary, or the members of the non-profit organization, and everybody who takes part at the Chiemgauer system will be a passive member of the non-profit organization Chiemgauer. So he signs in the beginning something like a membership. It costs nothing, but you are formally a member of the community, and you accept the statutes of the community, and you are invited to participate in the formulation or the discussion about these statutes. And in these statutes, these two rules, which I mentioned before, the exchange fee or the demurrage fee, are formulated in the statutes. And we have once a year a meeting with members, and we discuss all things, and then we can change such statutes. And then the CEOs are elected every year or every 2 years, and they represent the organization, and they are doing most of the work, and they try to motivate voluntary workers, and they try to activate exchange offices, and they also try to find other funds to develop the organization. So we are doing projects, and there in this project we have employees, and we try to complement with this project the core idea of the Chiemgauer. Yeah, but we don't get any finance for the Chiemgauer from the state or from others, but we get some funds for our projects.
But I'm still not clear as to the governance structure of the Chiemgauer organization. Like, let's say that a group of members decided that they don't like demurrage, and they want to remove that as a feature. Yeah. What would be the process for adjudicating that difference of opinion? Yeah.
So they can formulate it in a notice to the CEOs, and they put it on the list of the topics in the annual meeting, and then the group can open or can discuss the topic, and we want to change it, and that's our opinion, and we want to we want a majority for our proposal. And then there's a decision about it or a vote. And then the majority votes about it. And for these kind of rules, we have the rule the majority can change it. And there are other rules where we need 75% of the vote to have some fundamental changes in the statutes. And the demurrage is mentioned also in the fundamental statutes, and it would be interesting to change the fees, but not to change the constitution. So it would be a paradox, and therefore I think we try to that we don't have majority decisions. We always try to have a unanimous decision, to have a one vote where everybody is heard and everybody can contribute, participate and contribute to the project. And when we have a conflict, we try to get some time and to have discussion, to have some meetings, and then with the next meeting we have with a vote where there's something of a consensus. And we only had 1 or 2 times a majority decision, and that was not good for our organization, because we had then a split in the groups. So group split it and said, okay, when this majority says in this direction, then we don't go with them. And we had it in the 20 years, I think only 1 time. And of course, then we had a problem in this year, and the CEO split up, and we had a new election, and then it went on. That was, I think, 15 years ago. Yeah, and with this experiments, we said, okay, we try to make it more calm, to have more meetings, to talk more to each other, and to learn, how to bring the community first, to say, okay, the relations between people are very important, and when we don't have the perfect rule, we should talk more about it.
I would imagine if you're successful in growing it to 10 or 100 times its current size, that would become more and more difficult to achieve what you just described. I guess you'll cross that bridge when you get to it.
Yeah, I think the conflict after 10 years had to do with growth, because we had many different regions in the Chiemgauer, or different local people in the Chiemgauer. So one people were from Prien at Lake Chiemsee, other were from Traunstein. It's a city 20 kilometers the other way, Rosenheim, and they you saw they had a different thinking and a different culture, and then they clashed, and it took a time to understand how the culture of the other works, and some had the patience and some not, and I think that's a culture thing you have to learn, or we also had initiatives who split up totally. They ended because they had problems to find a common culture. Yeah.
Let's change gears again. I'd like to talk a little bit about you and your path some more. You sound like a pretty busy guy. I find it a fascinating decision on your part that in the midst of all of this, you decided to go back and do a PhD in economics. Can you talk about why? What was what did you feel you didn't have that you would get by going and doing that? And looking forward, now that you're just about done with that, what are your plans? Do you plan to teach, or was the PhD done in the service of the Chiemgauer?
Yeah. Yeah, I dreamed a long time of making a PhD. After studies, I wanted to do it, and I didn't found a dissertation advisor. And I went to my traineeship as a teacher, and then I forgot about it. But in the background, I dreamed of it. And then it was 2017, so 8 years ago. I was asked to join a research project as a practical partner. And I said, of course, yes, Chiemgauer can be a part of it. What are you doing? And the professor explained me what she's planning and doing. And the more she explained, the more I realized, oh, I could part of the research itself, not only as practical partner. And I proposed it, and she said, yes, why not? You are an economist. She is comes from the lawyer side, or how is it called? The law side, and she said, yeah, it would be wise to have a combination of law sciences and economics and the practice. And with us too, we have all three aspects in the research project. And though we tried, it was an experiment to start such a research project, because the specialty was that the research object was the Chiemgauer, and I was part of it. So I researched myself. I am the experimentator, and I am describing the experiment. And that's not new for some sciences, but for economics, it's totally new. Yeah, it's totally new. In medicine, we have examples, or in sociology, or psychology. I think the psychologists, they began with these self-experiments and PhD works about these self-experiments. But in economics, I think it's quite new. And so I tried to describe the experiment and to get the data out of the Chiemgauer experiment, and to have some statistical work, to have some description, description of complementary currencies, and to dive deep into the scientific side of complementary currencies. And my advisors were critical, but in the end they said, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting research. It's not it's not the best research of the world, but it's very interesting, it's innovative, and so we let you pass. And I hope so. So it's not finished yet. So in the beginning of September, I have my exam, and I hope I will pass, and then it's over. My journey over 7 years. Yeah. And it was only possible because the topic was about complementary currencies and the Chiemgauer. So it's not a different topic. That what I worked was the same way where I researched. And though it have synergies, and I think it helped also my practical work to have a more scientific thinking and reflective thinking about my practical side. And for the research work, I think it was very good to have this practice in it. Yeah, but I was in a research association, and I had some professors who said that's no research work. That's not science. And we had the debates and we had the discussion, and yeah, now I'm here. Yeah.
So this conversation has actually gone quite differently than I anticipated, because what I did not know about you is that you're much more motivated by the complementary currency side of things than the Silvio Gesell / demurrage side of things, which of course is my main interest. But I'm curious, if at all, to what extent you've had an opportunity to engage the public in discussion of Gesell, of demurrage, of exploration of a fundamentally different model of economics.
I think I have one chapter in my, or two chapters in my dissertation. One chapter is about the Gesellian approach and Keynesian approach, and the other one is an econometrical research about the Chiemgauer, and to look on it, on the economic effects, or the effects on the unemployment in the region. And yeah, it's experimental because the data is a micro data. I don't have macro data. I only have micro data from the local community. And I have the turnover and the exchange and some data of the Chiemgauer and the circulation and the velocity of the Chiemgauer. And then I made some econometrical comparisons and found out that the Chiemgauer had an effect in the last 15 years in the region. And you see it on the micro level when you compare some cities with others, where the Chiemgauer is strong, to cities where the Chiemgauer is not strong. Then you see the differences. And you see a positive impact of the Chiemgauer on the unemployment. And of course, it would be better to have 10 times more turnover. Then you see much more in this data. And of course, when you look at the data of the Vogel experiment, you see you have 2 points in the beginning and 1 year after. Then you see a decrease in unemployment, and you see an increase in the local currency issue from the city, but you don't have a proof because we only have 2 or 3 data points in the Vogel experiment. And the advantage of the Chiemgauer is I have monthly data for 20 years. And that's a big thing in data science, because you have a very long-term data series, and then it works. Even if it's micro, it's very, very micro. So I discussed it with some specialists in this field, and there are not many. There are not many specialists. I think worldwide we have 500 or 1,000 people, and I discussed it with 10 people, I think. And first they laughed about it, but then they said, Okay, it could work, yeah, because the principle is the same as when I took the macro data of the St. Louis Fed statistics, for example, for the dollar emissions and the velocity or the debt of the US and the GDP and the unemployment rate. Yeah, I get the data out of it. The principle of comparison is the same, and you can apply these methods. And yeah, I met one of these guys who invented this method. He got the Nobel Prize for economics for it. He went to Frankfurt and introduced some ideas on a conference, and yeah, I think it works. It works also for these regional models, and then you can conclude that when this kind of rules and issuing works in the local level, why don't you transfer it on the macro level? Yeah, and Kenneth Rogoff says the same thing. He says, yeah, when you get into a crisis, let's do 6% negative interest on the euro, and the economy will work. And we show in the Chiemgauer system that with a 6% negative interest, nobody's interested to hoard it, and nobody stops the economy. And I think that's a very important solution. And here, I think we have the strongest connection between Gesell and the Chiemgauer and the complementary currency.
Just as sort of a concluding thought, in my role as sort of a proponent for Gesell, you mentioned that you have at least temporarily sort of plateaued in terms of overall turnover. I wonder, and I'm sure you know that Gesell, even though he's a fairly obscure figure, that the people who know about him and who come to believe in his ideas get pretty passionately motivated. I wonder if perhaps engaging in a more intensive public education campaign around his ideas might be a vehicle to pour some more gasoline on the fire, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would hope so. And I think, yeah, if you create games, if you create a good wording and so on, I think it's possible to convince and to spread the idea. And of course we have different money reform ideas, and I'm still convinced that the idea of circulating money is still important. We have the techniques to issue endless money in the world. Yeah, and many are fascinated by this idea. When you look at modern money theory and you look at positive money, many say, oh, we don't need this kind of demurrage fees and these circulation fees. Because we have the possibility to create money out of nothing, and if we have a crisis, we create more. That's so easy. Why should we have these problems in psychology to say people, I take you something away, when it's easier to say, I create, when you hoard it, no problem, you can hoard billions, I create billions. It's easier because everybody is happy. But of course, we know when we look at history, then we create many problems out of it. Because when the guy with the billions say, okay, I want to spend it, then the economy has a problem. And when the guy say, I want to hoard 10 billions or 10 trillions, then the economy has also a problem with the inequality, which we see today. So, it's a very important thing to look at it in a more organic way, to see, okay, money has much to do with balances, and balances has much to do with flows, that money must flow. Then we can get balances. Yeah, and I think the Gesellian school has understood these organic thinking of the flowing of money and these balances in the money accounts, and that's very important. I am convinced that we have to spread this idea further, and also have to appreciate what is possible today with techniques. Yeah, so I think there's no finished concept of a Gesellian money. I don't know if we have some concepts or some ideas, but it is difficult to say, okay, should we only issue a state money, one monopole money with a demurrage fee, or should we issue many regional monies with a demurrage fee, or should we go on to let the banks create the money, but they simply apply the demurrage on their private bank money? So what is the solution when you think in the Gesellian world? Yeah, and therefore I think the Chiemgauer example brings a new type into it, the idea of decentralized money. Maybe it's the most complicated proposal, because you have many different decentralized monies. You maybe have different demurrage fees, and it is maybe complicated for the complexity of the world. But the world is complex, and people are complex, and cultures are complex, and I think maybe it's better to adjust the money in a complex way to the kind of living than to adjust people to the money system. And even if it's a monopolistic global Gesell money, I'm not sure if we are happy to adjust to it. Yeah? And maybe it's better to adjust these monies to the people, or to the different peoples. Yeah.
Well, that last point you talked about was actually one that I had planned on talking with you extensively about, because as you know, Gesell himself said there is either state money or no money. And so I don't think it's at all clear that he would have supported these kinds of projects. That doesn't mean that they're not consistent with his principles, but I have my doubts, and I will never know, because he died before any of these projects ever took off. There was one, I think, in the last year of his life. But anyway, that will be fodder for a future discussion. I thank you so much for joining us. In my mind, you are the most successful Gesellian in history. I mean, people talk about Virgil all of the time. Virgil was a town of 4,000 people. The project lasted 13 months. So that is tiny in comparison with what you've accomplished. So congratulations. I am hugely supportive and admire your work, and I hope that this will be just the first time that the Economy 2.0 audience will see your face and hear your words. So thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Thanks to the audience for joining us. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, many thanks, and I will try to read the chat. And when anybody wants to discuss or have questions, please write me, and then I try to answer you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.